I just want to remind everyone that today we have our fourth webinar by Shahrokh Monjazeb, and this one covers the rest of the Lohe Rais, which he started last time, and then we will turn to the Lohe Fuad, which is a relatively short tablet. Today we're just covering paragraphs 20 to 29 of the Lohe Rais, I assume 29 being the last tablet, or last paragraph. So, take it away, Shahrokh.
Hello, friends. Good to have you here. Our fourth installment and the last of this course on the three tablets of Baha'u'llah to the Turkish Prime Ministers. We are studying the remaining half, or remaining third, if you will, of the Lohe Rais, the second tablet where Ali Pasha, the Turkish Prime Minister, was addressed. As I said, this tablet, in this tablet, Baha'u'llah specifically addresses Ali Pasha. There are instances where other, like the generality of humanity, are addressed, but this tablet was revealed specifically for Ali Pasha. So in paragraph 20 and 21, Baha'u'llah addresses all the peoples of the world. So this is, he turns from Ali Pasha for a moment to addressing the peoples of the world, and he invites them to ponder on the narrative of his persecutions and reminds them of the ephemeral nature of this world. He writes, "O peoples of the earth, incline your inner ears to the call of this wronged one, and pause to reflect upon the story that we have recounted. Perchance ye may not be consumed by the fire of self and passion, nor allow the vain and worthless objects of this nether world to withhold you from him who is the eternal truth. Glory and abasement, riches and poverty, tranquility and tribulation, all will pass away, and all the peoples of the earth will ere long be laid to rest in their tombs. It behooveth, therefore, every man of insight to fix his gaze upon the goal of eternity, that perchance by the grace of him who is the ancient king, he may attain unto the immortal kingdom and abide beneath the shade of the tree of his revelation." Though this world be fraught with deception and deceit, yet it continually warns all men of their impending extinction. The death of the father proclaims to the son that he too shall pass away. Would that the inhabitants of the world who have amassed riches for themselves and have strayed far from the true one might know who will eventually lay hand on their treasures. But by the life of Baha, no one knows this save God, exalted be his glory. This excerpt about the death of the father proclaims to the son that he too shall pass away is very profound. I know as a youth, when I read this, it really left a real impression on me, that, there is this cycle of life. There is that eventually this life is very finite, and we all shall pass on. And I think when my father passed away, it became really even more profound and tangible in my mind. Now, continuing of the same theme as paragraph 20 and 21, Baha'u'llah begins paragraph 22 with a verse from the famous classical Persian Sufi poet Sana'i. I should say few things about Sana'i. Sana'i is known in Persian literature as Hakim Sana'i Ghaznavi. In fact, Baha'u'llah refers to him as Hakim Sana'i here, but in the translation, they've just used the word the poet. He was really more than just a poet. He was a very influential Sufi practitioner. He actually predates Rumi, and according to Rumi himself, is one of the the two major influences on him, one being Attar, the other one being Sanoi. So Fariduddin Attar, the author of The Conference of the Bird, Mantaq al-Tayr, and then the Sanoi. Now, Sanoi, I would say, is even more important, and he influenced so many of the later poets, and was one of the great Sufi doctors, if you will. And his book that is called Hadiqatul Haqiqa, the Walled Garden of Truth, is a very famous one. It goes Hadiqatul Tariqa, sorry, Hadiqatul I have to look it up, but I apologize for that. And it's an incredible Masnavi. So he was the one of the influences on Rumi, who wrote basically in Masnavi, but he was author of Ghazal and Qasideh, which are the two other styles of Persian poetry. Shari'atul Hadiqatul Haqiqa. Yes. So his work is called Hadiqatul Haqiqa and Shari'atul Tariqa. Shari'atul Tariqa. I know that the alliteration is a little bit hard to remember. But his works have been translated even into English. I know my dear friend, Dr. Frank Lewis, did his doctoral dissertation on Sanoi under the supervision of the late Dr. Hishmatullah Muayyad in the University of Chicago. Just again, a very important poet and a Sufi practitioner. So the verse quoted by Baha'u'llah in the original, for those who might be interested, reads as Pand girid ey siyahitan gerefte jay pand, Pand girid ey sefiditan damide bar azar, which is the translation of Take heed, O ye whose unseemly conduct hath darkened your faces. Take heed, O ye whose beards have been whitened by age. Now, for those who are interested, Baha'u'llah has quoted this verse from Sanoi in at least 3 other of his tablets that I know of, all of which have not as yet, unfortunately, been translated into English. But it is a verse that the Blessed Beauty has used in other tablets. So the paragraph begins, the poet Sanoi, may God's mercy rest upon him, hath said, take heed, O ye whose unseemly conduct hath darkened your faces. Take heed, O ye whose beards have been whitened by age. Alas, most of the people are fast asleep. They are even as the man who in his drunkenness became attracted to a dog, took it in his embrace and made it his plaything, and who, when the morn of discernment dawned and the light of the sun enveloped the horizon, realized that the object of his affection was but a dog. Then, filled with shame and remorse, he replied to his, he repaired to his abode. Now, again, the expression of the dog, in the Western culture, dogs are, very loved. In the Eastern culture and the traditional Islamic culture, particularly of Iran, the Shia dogs were considered najas and unclean and sort of detestable because they were mostly stray dogs. So this is hence the imagery that is being used here. In paragraph 23, Baha'u'llah turns his attention back to Ali Pasha and reprimands him for allowing his ego to dominate his character and actions. He writes, think not that thou hast abased this youth or prevailed over him. The least of creatures ruleth over thee. and yet thou perceivest not. The lowliest and most abject of all things holds sway over thee, and that is none other than self and passion, which have ever been reprehensible. Were it not for God's consummate wisdom, thou wouldst have been able to plainly behold thine own helplessness and that of all who dwell on earth. This line is very profound. I mean, there are many lines in this tablet that are very profound, but I want the students of the class to really reflect on this, and we can talk about it more in the forum. And he says, were it not for God's consummate wisdom, thou wouldst have been able to plainly behold thine own helplessness and that of all who dwell on earth. But because of God's, consummate wisdom, he's not able to see that. It's very interesting. Our abasement, then Baha'u'llah says, our abasement is indeed the glory of his cause, could ye but understand. In paragraph 24, Baha'u'llah states that his sense of courtesy disallows him to expose the misdeeds of the prime minister and his colleagues in the Ottoman government. This reminds me, in the second tablet to Napoleon III, Baha'u'llah also talks about courtesy. And he says that God does not wish to reprimand in a language too profane, where they deserve to be chastised and scolded in a severe way. But here he exposes the virtue of courtesy, which I believe is a great testimony to Baha'u'llah's approach, God's approach, which we should take heed as an admonishment. So he says, this youth hath ever been disinclined to breathe a word contrary to courtesy. For courtesy is our raiment, wherewith we have adorned the temples of our well-favored servants. Otherwise, some of the deeds that ye believe to be concealed would have been divulged in this tablet. The Baha'u'llah says that, we could shame you because we are omniscient. We are fully aware of what you have done, and some of the things that would really embarrass you, we could actually put on paper. But he says, yet as out of courtesy, we're disinclined to do so. So I found that very fascinating and very very telling of the approach of the manifestation as the true exemplar for all of us as members of the human race. In paragraph 25, Baha'u'llah resumes his complaints to Ali Pasha about the mistreatment of the exiles upon their arrival in Akka, especially the children and the feeble. Baha'u'llah also recounts a conversation he had with one of the Ottoman officials in charge of implementing his exile. He writes, O exponent of might and power, addressing Ali Pasha, these young children and these poor ones in God did not need to be accompanied by officers and soldiers. Upon our arrival in Gallipoli, a major by the name of Omar came into our presence. God is well aware of what he said. After some exchanges, his own innocence and thy guilt were mentioned, we declared from the outset a gathering should have been convened at which the learned men of this age could have met with this youth in order to determine what offense these servants have committed. But now the matter hath gone beyond such considerations, and according to thine own assertion, thou art charged with incarcerating us in the most desolate of cities. There is a matter which, if thou findest it possible, I request thee to submit to His Majesty the Sultan, that for 10 minutes this youth be enabled to meet him, so that he may demand whatsoever he deemeth as a sufficient testimony and regardeth as proof of the veracity of him who is the truth. Should God enable him to produce it, let him then release these wronged ones and leave them to themselves. In paragraph 26, Baha'u'llah continues with his proposal that he should appear before some kind of a royal tribunal so that he could defend any charges which may have been leveled against him. This is very important from a Islamic law as well, because the Sultan, as being the shadow of God on earth, and the commander of the faithful, Amir al-Mu'mineen, in the Sunnis, the Sultan was always the Amir al-Mu'mineen. And part of the duty of the commander, and this goes back to the time of Prophet Muhammad, and then later on, all the rightly guided caliphs, they did that where people, even the common people, would come before them, before their court, and would plead a case, and so Baha'u'llah is invoking that tradition. That I've never been tried before a tribunal, and the decision to exile him was based on a commission that actually in Istanbul tried some of the Baha'is and the Azalis, and then decided that, in their own judgment, that they were, fomenter of discord, and then that they should be sort of exiled and so on and so forth. But Baha'u'llah was not involved. And in fact, this is why Khurshid Pasha, the governor of Adrianople, protested, and it's actually been recorded, and he actually resigned his post in protest, that Baha'u'llah had nothing to do. And if you're going to accuse him or exile him and his family, you should at least, hear what he has to say. And therefore, that would be the just way of doing things. But through the intervention of the Persian Consul General, Mirza Hossein Khan Mushir-ud-Dawleh, and then, Ali Pasha as well. Eventually, the edict of the Sultan was issued for Baha'u'llah's perpetual exile to the penal colony of Akka. So here, Baha'u'llah is invoking, and in paragraph 25 and 26, is basically saying that, you owe it to me to allow me to defend my case. So Baha'u'llah continues, he says, this Omar promised to transmit this message and to give us his reply. We received, however, no news from him, although it becomes not him who's the truth to present himself before any person, inasmuch as all have been created to obey him. Yet in view of the condition of these little children and the large number of women so far removed from their friends and countries, we have acquiesced in this matter. In spite of this, nothing hath resulted. Omar himself is alive and accessible. Inquire from him that the truth may be made known unto you. He says that, Baha'u'llah says that to Ali Pasha. In paragraph 27, Baha'u'llah describes the current condition of the exiles incarcerated in the army barracks prison of Akka, and recounts a tragic event after the death of two of the exiles in the early days of their arrival. Most of our companions now lie sick in this prison. So this is now more of the current, and from this, the current condition. So this is why I had originally stated that this tablet was revealed within probably 30, 60 days after the arrival of the exiles. So Baha'u'llah says, most of our companions now lie sick in this prison, and none knows what befell us except God, the Almighty, the All-Knowing. In the days following our arrival, 2 of these servants hastened to the realms above. For an entire day, the guards insisted that until they were paid for the shrouds and burial, those blessed bodies could not be removed, although no one had requested any help from them. At that time, we were devoid of earthly means and pleaded that they leave the matter unto us and allow those present to carry the bodies, but they refused. So generally, being that they were also people of different faith, normally the government would allow the people of that faith to bury their own dead. And you know, Baha'u'llah says, we didn't ask them. We said, just let us bury the dead. But the guards wanted to extort money from these exiles who were very helpless and in a very vulnerable and precarious situation. So this is what occurred. Finally, a carpet was taken to the bazaar to be sold. Now, you see, it's also very touching. The carpet was Baha'u'llah's carpet. It was a carpet that he would sleep on. It's a carpet that he, you know, I mean, back then there was no tables and chairs. So the carpet that the Blessed Beauty had, as a result, he ordered it to be taken, and the friends reluctantly took it and to the bazaar, and they sold it. The sum obtained was delivered to the guards, okay? And then Baha'u'llah says later it was learned that they had merely dug a shallow grave into which they had placed both blessed bodies, although they had taken twice the amount required for shrouds and burial. So Baha'u'llah talks about this injustice, this extortion, and brings it to the attention of Ali Pasha, the prime minister, that this was an egregious act, and it was unjust and inhumane, and he's pleading the case, but obviously it fell on deaf ears. In the 2 concluding paragraphs of the tablet, paragraphs 28 and 29, Baha'u'llah refers to the magnitude of his sufferings and his detachment from the world and its vanities. He also admonishes Ali Pasha one last time so that he may be awakened from the slumber of his ignorance. Baha'u'llah writes in paragraph 28, the pen is powerless to depict and the tongue fails to describe the trials which we have suffered. Yet sweeter than honey to me is the bitterness of such tribulations. Would that at every instant all the afflictions of the world could, in the path of God and for the sake of his love, be visited upon this evanescent soul who is immersed in the ocean of divine knowledge. We implore God for patience and forbearance, inasmuch as thou, Ali Pasha, art but a feeble creature and bereft of comprehension. Wert thou to awaken and inhale the fragrance of the breezes that waft from the retreats of eternity, thou wouldst readily abandon all that thou dost possess and in which thou dost rejoice, and choose to abide in one of the dilapidated rooms of this most great prison. Beseech God to grant thee such mature understanding as to enable thee to distinguish praiseworthy actions from those which merit blame. And then Baha'u'llah concludes the tablet with this verse, peace be upon him who follows the way of guidance. So that ends part 2 and the remaining part of Lawh al-Rais. I'm just going to move right into the next tablet because this is being our last webinar. We can, again, if you have any questions about this, hopefully at the end of this presentation, you can bring it up and we can address it, or in the forum as well. So, now I am going to low profile this and bring up the Okay, we should be good to go here. Now, the third tablet in this course is Lawh Fuad. Now, Lawh Fuad is a very short and rather unique tablet in that the theme is divine retribution, and in a very graphic way, and you'll see, the sort of the nature of it. So it's really not a proclamatory tablet, and as you will see, it was actually not revealed in honor of Fuad Pasha. It was Fuad Pasha's plight is mentioned. That's why it has become known as Lawh Fuad. In fact, it's a tablet that was revealed in honor of one of Baha'u'llah's apostles, Sheikh Kazim Samandar, which we're going to address right now. So the revelation of Lawh Fuad, this tablet known as Lawh Fuad, was actually revealed in honor of Sheikh Kazim Samandar, one of the eminent followers of Baha'u'llah, whom Shoghi Effendi has included among the 19 apostles of Baha'u'llah. The Guardian in the Baha'i World volume, I believe, in the 1920s or 1930s, first numbered 19 of prominent, figures at the time of Baha'u'llah as the apostles of Baha'u'llah. And he did the same thing for Abdul Baha as well. So in this work, Baha'u'llah, among other things in this law, recounts the divine retribution which has assailed Fuad Pasha, the former Ottoman Prime Minister, after the latter's death. Now, to tell you a little bit about Sheikh Kazim Samandar. Now, Sheikh Kazim was a brilliant man, was truly one of the eminent Baha'is. He was described as a flame of the love of God by Shoghi Effendi, who identified him as one of the apostles of Baha'u'llah. Now, he was born Muhammad Kazim on February 7th, 1844. So he's around the same age as Abdul Baha. In fact, about 3-4 months older than Abdul Baha. Abdul Baha was born on May 23rd. Sheikh Kazim was February 7th, 1844. In Qazvin, he was the eldest surviving son of Haji Sheikh Muhammad Qazvini, a prominent merchant of Qazvin who had become a Babi and had also attained the presence of the Bab during the Bab's exile to Mahku and Chehrid. He attains the presence of the Bab, and he has at least one tablet from the Bab where he had asked questions, and His Holiness the Bab had honored him with a response. And he is known as, because his name was Muhammad, and he is known and referred to as Nabil Akbar. Now, not to be confused with the prominent apostle of Baha'u'llah, Nabil Akbar, Muhammad Ghaini, but he's generally, I think scholars refer to him as Nabil Akbar Qazvini. So because he was from the city of Qazvin. Now, I want to remind you, Qazvin is also the city where Tahira came from. So there were many prominent individuals from Qazvin. And in fact, Haji Sheikh Muhammad Qazvini knew Mullah Hussein, he knew Hujjat, he knew Wahid, he knew all the greats. So he was amongst the early prominent Babis. And fortunately, because of his position as a merchant, he was not a cleric, but as a result of that, he was not arrested or executed. He was very well respected as a merchant. He was a mercantile. And he also attained the presence of Baha'u'llah. He actually corresponded with Baha'u'llah, and Baha'u'llah has revealed about 7 tablets in his honor. But he passes away in 1861, so while Baha'u'llah was still in Baghdad prior to Baha'u'llah's declaration in the Garden of Rizwan. I certainly believe that if he had lived long enough, he would have embraced the cause of Baha'u'llah. and but his son definitely did. So, so as I said, Haji Sheikh Muhammad Ghazvini died sometime around September of 1861 when his son Sheikh Kazem was about 16 and a half years of age. But he was the eldest of the family, so he became the head of the family. Sheikh Kazem became a confirmed believer. Around that time, there was a lot of agitations, and there were Azalis who were trying to sway people to the side of Azal, Mirza Yahya Sobh Azal in Ghazvin. And what Sheikh Kazem did, he actually decided that he was going to examine the writings of both Azal and Baha'u'llah and determine who is rightfully the successor to the Bab, or the one that people should really take heed or pay more attention. And obviously he realized that was Baha'u'llah. And what he did, he then wrote a short pamphlet denouncing the Azali's claim as false and baseless. And then this actually was well read within the Qazvin community and surroundings in northern Iran particularly, and basically put a stop to the Azali incursions, if you will, and silenced them. And because of this, he was honored by Baha'u'llah with several tablets. And in one of those early tablets, Baha'u'llah entitled him Samandar, which means phoenix in Persian. Baha'u'llah has revealed over 100 tablets and prayers in his honor, the most famous perhaps being Loh Fad. I want to just say a couple things about also, the Samandari family have done a magnificent job. There is a lot of information about Sheikh Kazem because of two things, because of obviously the works of his family members in recent years, and also because he himself has left a chronicle, which I'm going to mention here. So this book here, آثار قلمی جناب شیخ محمد کاظم سمندر و بعضی آثار متفرقه, as you can see, is a thick volume. This is where his history that he wrote is published, and his family, his descendants, have done a magnificent job. But even a more valuable work is this book, this collection of tablets called Ayat Bayanat. It has over 184 tablets from Baha'u'llah in here, and about another 100 or plus from Abdul Baha that was just addressed to the Samandari family. And these are very, very important tablets. They're magnificent tablets in which Baha'u'llah, both historically as well as from teachings point of view, and some excerpts of some of these tablets have been translated, for example, by The Guardian. But again, a magnificent work that was done by the Samandari family. Kudos to them for doing that. It's probably the only family so far that has done such a tremendous job of collecting all the relevant documents related to the central figures of their family, who were very prominent members of the early Baha'is and Babi Baha'i communities. Now, Baha'u'llah has revealed over 100 tablets, as I said, and prayers in his honor to his family members as well, and the most famous of them being Loh Fad. Even though Loh Fad is very famous, it's probably not as important as some of the other tablets based on their content. What Sheikh Kazem did, he was truly a dedicated servant of the cause of Baha'u'llah. He worked tirelessly teaching the faith in Iran. He traveled all around Iran until he became old and feeble, and also with his sons as well. He continued to promote the cause of Baha'u'llah and later the cause of Abdul Baha. As I said, he has written a valuable chronicle of the early history of the faith known as Tarikh Samandar. And in fact, Shoghi Effendi has quoted excerpts from this and translated it in the footnotes of the Dawnbreakers. So Tarikh Samandar is one of the early chronicles, very important chronicles of the Baha'i faith. Sheikh Kazem went on pilgrimage to attain the presence of Baha'u'llah on several occasions. I mean, he came from a merchant family, so he could afford it, but he was also in love with the Blessed Beauty and the Holy Family. And so he was fortunate to travel to the Holy Land on several occasions. The last time that during the ministry of Baha'u'llah, when he was there, was a few weeks before the passing of Baha'u'llah. And this is when his son also, Tarazullah Samandari, who later became the Hand of the Cause of God during the ministry of Shoghi Effendi, was also present, where he has left an account of Baha'u'llah meeting the Blessed Beauty, which he describes in a beautiful detail at the first Baha'i World Congress in 1963 in Royal Albert Hall in England, which was translated by Mrs. Marzia Gale. Wonderful, wonderful, again, heritage that these father and son have left behind. Sheikh Kazem remained faithful to Baha'u'llah's covenant and would correspond regularly with Abdul Baha, and he died on February 5th, 1918, about 3.5 years before the passing of Abdul Baha. So he was a very active member of the Baha'i community during the ministry of Baha'u'llah and later during the ministry of Abdul Baha, and his family, his sons were also, and we know the most prominent of his offsprings was his son Mirza Tarazullah, who was appointed Hand of the Cause of God by Shoghi Effendi. Now to the less prominent or more infamous individual, Fuad Pasha. Fuad Pasha, which Baha'u'llah actually says he was the most prominent of those people that exiled him or were responsible for his exile. He, like Ali Pasha, in fact, in some ways, he may have been even more prominent than Ali Pasha. They were both really contemporary of each other and worked together. And they both came through the translation bureau of the Ottomans. And he became, during the Sultanate of Sultan Abdul Majid, he became a foreign minister. And then when Abdul Majid passed away in 1861, the newly crowned Sultan, Abdul Aziz, made him the Grand Vizier in November of 1861. Now, he remained the Grand Vizier from November 1861 to 5th of June 1866. So he was the Grand Vizier during Baha'u'llah's exile from Baghdad to Istanbul, and then from Istanbul to Edirne. So this is, I just want you to be aware that it was not Ali Pasha, it was actually Fuad Pasha. Now, with the exception of 6 months in 1863, from January through June, so that would have been around the time of when Baha'u'llah declared. So he was not, and at that time I think it was Ali Pasha, but from 6th of January to 3rd of June of 1863, he took a break, and then finally in 1866, he just had enough, and I'll talk about that. He was the important member of the Tanzimat Council, the great reform of the mid-19th century. So he is known as one of the chief, promoters and the architects of the Tanzimat movement. He became chairman of the Council of Tanzimat, in fact, in 1856. Served as the Ottoman foreign minister from 1858 to 1861, when he was elevated to the rank of the Grand Vizier by Sultan Abdul Aziz. Together with Ali Pasha, he tried to keep the empire together and protected from the excessive spending of its overindulgent sovereigns. First, Abdul Majid, but mostly and grossly was Abdul Aziz, the contemporary to Baha'u'llah and the one whom Baha'u'llah addressed. He was a big spender, excessive spender that led the Ottoman treasury to bankruptcy. And again, it's a kind of a long story, but it is recorded in history. By 1866, Fuad was so exhausted and dispirited by political battles with the crown, namely Sultan Abdul Aziz, that he resigned his post and soon after became ill and passed away in February of 1869. In the Loh Fuad, Baha'u'llah, in an ominous and frightful language, describes the condition of Fuad Pasha, or Fuad Pasha's soul, at the hour of his death. He writes, "Know thou that through the power of his sovereign might, God hath seized him who was the foremost among them that passed judgment against us." So now the external features of the tablet, according to Sheikh Kazim Samandar, he received the Loh Fuad sometime after early April of 1870. So it was kind of in this sort of in the spring, which puts the revelation of the tablet in late winter or in the first quarter of 1870. I think it would have been roughly around January, February of 1870, where this tablet was revealed by Baha'u'llah. The tablet, which is about 4 pages long in English and divided into 21 paragraphs, is composed entirely in Arabic. Its complete official Baha'i English translation was first published in the Summons of the Lord of Hosts, and it's there on pages 177 to 181. Now, Baha'u'llah begins the Loh Fuad with these words, and it's in Arabic, so I will attempt to read you the first couple of lines of it. It begins, Huwa al-Aqdasul Abha, and then there's the initial Kaf and Za, which basically represents Kazim. And then the tablet begins, Nadaynaka an wara' غلزم الكبرياء على الأرض الحمراء من أفق البلاء أنه لا إله إلا هو العزيز الوهاب استقم على أمري ولا تكن من الذين إذا أوتوا ما أرادوا كفروا بالله رب الأرباب سوف يأخذهم الله بقهر من عنده إنه هو المقتدر القهار. So the tablet begins, He is the most holy, the most glorious. We call unto thee from beyond the sea of grandeur upon the crimson land above the horizon of tribulation. Verily, no God is there save him, the Almighty, the most generous. Walk thou steadfastly in my cause, and follow not the ways of those who, upon attaining unto the object of their desire, denied God, the Lord of Lords. Ere long shall he lay hold upon them in his wrath, and he verily is the all-powerful, the all-subduing. So that was the the highlight of the sentences that I had read in the first paragraph. In the second paragraph, Baha'u'llah continues, Know thou that through the power of his sovereign might, God hath seized him who was the foremost amongst them that passed judgment against us. When he saw his torment approaching, he fled to Paris to seek recourse to physicians. This is reference to Ali Pasha's move to Paris. And then there's a series of very fascinating and eerie dialogue here, which Baha'u'llah recounts what Ali Pasha was saying, at the time of his death. So Baha'u'llah quotes and says, "Is there none to help me?" Ali Pasha is asking. He asked. He was smitten upon the mouth and told, "There is no escape." And this is a verse from the Quran as well. Then Baha'u'llah says, "And when he turned towards the angel of wrath, he well nigh expired from fear." And then he says to this angel, "I have a house full of riches," he pleaded. "I have a palace on the Bosphorus, beneath which the rivers flow." The angel replied, "No ransom shall be accepted from thee on this day, even shouldst thou offer up all things visible and invisible." Wow. "Hearest thou not the sighs of the kindred of God, whom thou didst cast into prison without proof or testimony? Thy deed hath provoked the lamentation of the inmates of paradise, and of those who circle morn and eve round the throne on high. The wrath of thy Lord hath descended upon thee, and stern is he in his chastisement." Again, this is a quote or a reference from the Quran as well. And then Fuad Pasha apparently, makes reply, "I held command over the people, and here is the mandate of my authority." And then the angel basically says, "Hold thy peace, O denier of the day of judgment." He implored. So here's the Fuad is imploring, "Is no respite possible so that I may send for my family?" "Far from it," the angel replies, "O disbeliever in the verses of God." Thereupon the keepers of the fathomless abyss called unto him, "The gates of hell have opened wide to receive thee, O thou who hast turned away from thy Lord, the unconstrained. Repair unto its fire, for it yearneth after thee. Hast thou forgotten, O rejected one, when thou wert the Nimrod of the age, how thy tyranny eclipsed the very cruelties of Pharaoh, the Lord of the stakes?" Again, this is a reference to a Quranic passage as well. "By God, thine iniquity hath rent asunder the veil of sanctity and caused the pillars of heaven to tremble. Where canst thou find refuge now? Where canst thou find refuge now? Who shall protect thee from the dreadful scourge of thy Lord, the all-compelling? There is no haven for thee in this day, O ungodly doubter." Whereupon the agony of death seized him, and he saw no more. Thus did we lay hold on him in our wrathful anger, and severe is thy Lord in his punishment. Wow, that sends a chill down my spine of being the subject of divine retribution like that. Oh my goodness. "Then an angel from the right hand of the throne summoned him. Behold, the angel of affliction. Is there any place to flee to save hell, wherein the heart boileth?" Oh my goodness. This heart, fu'ad, in Arabic means heart. So here, basically, I shouldn't be laughing, but I mean, it's just so, just incredible here, where fu'ad is actually boiling in hell, according to here. And the angel of chastisement received the spirit, and a voice proclaimed, enter the bottomless pit which hath been promised in the book, and whose existence thou didst day and night deny. Apparently, Fuad was a rather irreligious man and somewhat ungodly, in the way that he didn't believe in, he obviously was an outward Muslim because of his position as the Turkish prime minister, but he was very much inclined towards a lot of Western, liberalisms and ways that were just coming into light, and sort of the lechery of the age amongst the high-ranking officials, both in Europe and in the Middle East as well. Baha'u'llah continues, soon will we dismiss the one who was like unto him. And this is a reference to Ali Pasha. And will lay hold on their chief who ruleth the land. And that's a reference to Sultan Abdul Aziz. Ali Pasha, actually, after this tablet, about a year later, he died. And then Sultan dies basically after he is ousted in a palace coup, and then he's supposedly assassinated, or he committed suicide. It's still there's just basically two camps. He may have committed suicide. I think there's more reason to believe that he committed suicide, but that was in 1876. So we're looking at about 6 years. Within 1 year, Ali Pasha is gone, and then the Sultan himself is dead in about 6 years from the revelation of this tablet. So Baha'u'llah says, and we will lay hold on their chief who rules the land, and I verily am the Almighty, the All-Compelling. Be thou steadfast in the cause of God. And here is now, he's addressing Sheikh Kazim Samandar, and extol thy Lord morn and eve. Suffer not the light of thy soul to be quenched by the calumnies of the one who was so blinded by our bestowals as to turn away from God, the Lord of all names. He inspires his devoted followers even as the evil one prompts his own. Ere long shalt thou behold him in evident loss, both in this world and in the world to come. Now, I believe this is a reference again to Ali Pasha, and here, just again, it's quite a fascinating and a eerie and frightful way that divine retribution is being meted out here. The next, Baha'u'llah in paragraph 13, he continues, he indeed is among those whom an afflictive torment doth await him. And this is, he died of a sickness as well, Ali Pasha. He dispatched an epistle to someone in that land, a writ of the workers of iniquity, in which he mocked God and recorded that which filled all created things with dismay. I believe this is now a reference, Baha'u'llah is making reference to another individual. Don't far from a disbeliever in God, stakes, steadfast in the cause of God. Yeah, this is actually a reference to I've made a note here, of the misguided ways of Mirza Yahya, actually. Okay, so this is so it's kind of a little bit, we have to be able to decipher it. So after that, Baha'u'llah is making a reference from be thou steadfast in the cause of God and extol thy Lord morn and even. Yes, it is to Sheikh Kazim Samandar that Baha'u'llah says, and then he talks about this sort of the Azalis and what the Azalis have been trying to do now that Baha'u'llah is exiled. to Akka. So here, this is a reference to the misdeeds of Mirza Yahya. He indeed is among those whom an afflictive torment doth await. He dispatched an epistle to someone in that land, a writ of the workers of iniquity, in which he mocked God and recorded that which filled all created things with dismay. Say, canst thou find anyone to protect thee when the wrath of God, the all-powerful, the unconstrained, is visited upon thee? Thus have we informed thee of that which lieth concealed within the hearts of men. Verily, thy Lord is the Almighty, the All-Knowing. Arise for the triumph of this cause, and gather together my loved ones. So this is to Sheikh Kazim Samandar. Help them to see the truth in this day when the feet of men have slipped. Say, it behooves every true believer to assist his Lord. He verily is your helper, while the people have no one to turn to in this day. Then we seized Mehdi. Now, there is a reference, again, while Baha'u'llah is talking about divine retribution, he talks about another individual who committed basically gross injustices, but through his words and through his actions, but not necessarily by having to do anything with the suffering of a physical suffering and torment, like what Fuad Pasha and Ali Pasha and Sultan Abdul Aziz were accused of by God. Mirza Mehdi here is a fellow who was an avowed Azali. His name was Mirza Mehdi Rashti or Mirza Mehdi Gilani, and he is the recipient of Baha'u'llah's apologia, the voluminous Kitab Badi, which was revealed in Edirne. And I like to say a couple things about Kitab Badi here. Now, Kitab Badi is an incredible, incredible work, which unfortunately not much is known about it. In the West, there are some excerpts of it that have been translated by Dr. Nader Saidi in his Logos and Civilization, and Mr. Tahirzadeh also in the second volume of Revelation of Baha'u'llah does talk about it. But really, the full scope of the book still remains, not as known amongst the Western scholars and Baha'is alike. It is Baha'u'llah's apologia where he is defending his own cause, and he quotes from the writings of the Bab. Then the manner of his revelation is absolutely incredible in so many ways. It roughly, if you translate it into English, I have estimated that it will be about 600 pages altogether. It's in the handwriting of Zain al-Mugharrabin. It's about 420 pages, 418 pages long. It was revealed by Baha'u'llah in 6 hours. It just blows the mind. It was revealed basically over a period of 3 days, 2 hours each. And it is revealed as though it is someone else recounting or answering the questions. In fact, this Mehdi Gilani, who the ambassador, the Ottoman ambassador, Mirza Hussein Khan, had appointed as the judge of the Shiites in Istanbul. Because remember, based on each faction of each religion, they would, the government would require that they would have their own judge. So a Sunni judge would not try a Shiite because the Sharia law was different and is different for each sect. So in order to have a judge, this Mirza Mehdi was appointed as the high-ranking judge in Istanbul by the Persian ambassador Mirza Hussein Khan Mushir al-Dawleh. Now, Mirza Mehdi was friend also with Agha Muhammad Ali Tambaku Furush, who was a Baha'i and one of the companions of Baha'u'llah. So he writes a long letter accusing and basically denouncing Baha'u'llah and trying to establish Yahya, Mirza Yahya Sopa Azad, as the rightful successor and him whom God shall make manifest, essentially. So Agha Muhammad Ali Tambaku Furush brings these questions to the Blessed Beauty. This is in around 1865, 1866, around that time. And Baha'u'llah reveals the Kitab al-Badi as a response to Mirza Mehdi's questions and accusations, and basically defends his cause using the writings and quoting the writings of the Bab, where Baha'u'llah himself says he had never, read those writings. So it's magnificent. But Kitab al-Badi is just an incredible, incredible work that hopefully one of these years someone will shed more light on it. So here, because of this man's gross injustice, and because of the fact that the Bab had said anyone who would bring harm through their words, through their actions, to him whom God shall make manifest, would be worthy of divine chastisement and even death. In fact, it's in the Kitab Bayan Farsi that no one should bring as much as a tittle of grief to him whom God shall make manifest. So here, this is the divine retribution meted out to Mehdi Gilani. So here Baha'u'llah says, then we seized Mehdi, to whom we had promised divine chastisement in our books and scriptures. When our awful majesty encompassed him, he entreated, may I not retrace my steps? Again, Baha'u'llah is quoting Mirza Mehdi Gilani or Mirza Mehdi Rashdi. A voice exclaimed, woe betide thee, O disbeliever, in the day of resurrection. This is the nethermost fire, and its flames have been made to blaze for thee. Thou didst forsake all righteous deeds in thy vain and futile life, and now thou hast none to shield thee from God. Thou art indeed he who caused all hearts to be consumed and the Holy Spirit to lament. He pleaded, is there yet no refuge for me? Nay, by my Lord, even shouldst thou seek recourse to every possible means. Thereupon he cried out in such distress as to cause the peoples of the graves to tremble, and was seized by the hand of invincible power. A voice then proclaimed, return unto the seat of wrath in the fire of hell. Wretched and evil be thine abode. Wow, very similar to the plight of Fuad Pasha. Thus did we lay hold on him as we laid hold on those who preceded him. Behold their houses, which we have left to the spiders, and take heed, O ye who are endued with understanding. He it is who oppose God, and for whom the verses of wrath were revealed in the book. This verse of wrath, I mean, rarely have I seen Baha'u'llah in his writings show disdain towards an individual. He's so forgiving, he's so gracious, he's so loving, even to such ignorant people. But in the Kitab al-Badi, he refers to Mehdi as ahmaq, as stupid, as someone who's stupid. And there are words. So here, this verse where it says the verses of wrath, and they are in other tablets were revealed in the book. Blessed is he who readeth it and pondereth its contents, for a goodly end doth in truth await him. So he's encouraging us to read these works. Thus have we recounted unto thee the tale of the evildoers. So here, to Sheikh Kazem and the rest of the Baha'is, this tablet was meant to show that divine retribution promised in the tablets is real and is going to descend on those who rise to quench the light of God during his revelation and beyond. So he says, thus have we recounted unto thee the tale of the evildoers, that thine eyes may be solaced. As for thee, there lieth in store naught but a blissful end. What a beautiful. So in the contrast of light and darkness here, this wonderful light is cast upon Sheikh Kazem Samandar, that Baha'u'llah says, as for thee, there lies in store nothing but blissful, bliss and blissfulness. That is the end of the tablet. As I said, the tablet is rather short. So I think at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And here we are, Dr. Stockman and friends.
We have a couple of chat comments so far.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, Shahrokh. This was fascinating. I quite agree with you. I've never seen Baha'u'llah so wrathful.
Yeah.
Before. I mean, this is something God can do. And, that phrase, you don't mess with Mother Nature, you don't mess with a manifestation of God either. Really, I mean, no matter how many marvelous things Fuad Pasha did in terms of attempting to reform the Ottoman Empire, how valuable the Tanzimat was, and as an attempt to bring about modernity, how in some ways it sort of lays the foundations for the rise of the Young Turks and for the development of Ataturk and all of those reforms in the 20th century. So in that sense, what he did was of grave importance for the creation of modern Turkey and the whole modern Middle East, I guess you could say, since he wasn't able to hold it together.
Mm-hmm.
But in spite of all that, he condemned the manifestation of God to prison.
Yes.
And even if it fulfilled a few prophecies of getting the manifestation of God to the Holy Land. So it's fascinating to contemplate.
It is, and it's something that it kind of blows your mind. But I think this tablet, more than any other tablet, is, as I said, there is warnings in many of Baha'u'llah's tablets about those who choose not to follow the path of righteousness or try to rise up against the cause of God. Here he is giving an example that basically it's not just words that I am just telling. This is going to happen, and he says that in the hidden words, or tyrants of the earth, I've pledged myself not to forgive any man's injustice, and he says this is a pledge that I have.
That's interesting.
Made, and So this is, and you see that in the letters to the kings as well. In many of them, he does, like for example, we will see in the tablet to Napoleon III, and then in the Kitab Aqdas, referring to the fall of some of the other crowns, that divine retribution assailed them. So again, this tablet is, I think. The one thing about Loh Fuad is it's very graphic. It gives a very graphic and very eerie and frightful description of what the soul is at the hour of their death is going through. Oh my God! I mean, if this is not a deterrent, what is? I mean, can you just imagine? And gives them that frightful, chastisement that had been promised even in the Quran, and also the revelation of the Bab as well. So very, very, very fascinating. Very fascinating.
Yeah, really. Jerry asks about the two followers of Baha'u'llah who died in the prison.
Yes.
Were these the two brothers who died holding onto each other, or were they other babies or other?
No. They were actually, they're identified in Baha'u'llah King of Glory, page 283. They're Ustad Bagher and his brother Ustad Ismail Khayyat. They were tailors, and they were, I believe, they were from Kashan. And everybody got sick. The only person who had not got sick was Abdul Baha, because he was watching what he was eating. But the two contemporary chroniclers, if you will, Al-Hussein Ashji and Al-Razai Qannad, both described the arrival. And Mr. Balyuzi in his Baha'u'llah King of Glory has wonderfully quoted and translated these excerpts. And yes, so they were not babies, they were adults, or perhaps young men, but they were brothers, and they were basically had kind of, cuddled together because there was just not enough room. So, and they were both sick, and they essentially expired at the same time. So, so this is the one that Baha'u'llah says, two of these servants hasten to the realms above, So these are I believe there were actually three people who passed away, but these were the two brothers. And it was particularly their burial of them that Baha'u'llah uses in this, in this narrative here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jerry says, thanks. I wonder whether the third one is a reference to Mirza Mehdi, which of course is a bit later. Not much later, though.
No, it's much later. It's 2 years later. Yeah, Mirza Mehdi, there's no reference here. Mirza Mehdi falling through the skylight, that was in 1870. So this is 1868. So we've got, there's still about 2 years to go till the fall of Mirza Mehdi. Yes, but everyone was sick, and Mirza Mehdi was there too. It was amongst the exiles, and they were sick, and and women and children. I mean, it was dysentery. I think there was cholera as well. I mean, it was a bad. And you can imagine in the heat of the summer as well. I mean,
and in a relatively small space. I mean, there were 70 of them in a space maybe 30 or 40 feet square. It was. Yeah, I mean, if you've been there, it's not very big.
I mean, these were army barracks. These were not, housing complexes. These are for soldiers to come in for a few days and then get out, basically.
Yeah.
And
there were 4 rooms, if I remember right, 4 or 5 rooms, and
I know, and there was up and down, but yeah, there is. So there's a lot of them. And Baha'u'llah was the only one in a solitary confinement because the government had specifically stated. But then he also lost his carpet that he slept on too. It was, I mean, it is so moving. It is so unjust to see how these individuals were cast. I mean, the impact was not just one individual. We're talking about a whole large group of people that are just
60 or
collectively.
60 or 70 of them, something
60,
like that.
Yeah, it's around 70, 60, 60 plus, yes.
And most of them paid their own way, too.
Well, a few of them, because most of them were part of the household. If you look at the list, you'll see they're basically Baha'u'llah's family with their, his wives, and then there's his sons and sons' wives, and and then there's there was there's a large number. But yes, there were quite a few non-family members who had to pay their own way. Exactly.
Yeah.
I think these two brothers may have been one of those, who paid their way, and then they wind up being dying, and not, but yet, their desire and their wish was fulfilled because they died in the proximity of their Lord. So they were true lovers. Yeah, blessed soul.
An eternal bounty, really.
Exactly. I mean, and again, in contrast to what Fouad, who had the richest, and Mirza Mehdi Gilani, had they had prestige and pomp and circumstance, but yet their end for eternity is abased. Whereas these poor souls, their souls are elevated and exalted in the next world. So
Exactly.
I think these are all really object lessons for humanity, and I think this is going to echo throughout the ages for all of us and the future generations to look at and take heed. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Riaz has posted a YouTube link to the talk of the Hand of the Cause of God, Samandari, at the World Congress in '63. So that's in the chat. If anyone wants to go, they can open the chat and grab it and paste it somewhere so they can keep it for later. And that is quite a talk. I remember it was played at one of our celebrations of the birth of Baha'u'llah once a long time ago, 30 years ago or so.
Yes, it's very special. It's wonderful. Yes, it's. Yeah.
Oshan says, concerning the Loh Fu'ad, why would Baha'u'llah not include the Arabic letter mim after the Qaf and the Za? Was this his normal way of addressing Sheikh Kazem Samandar? Would Baha'u'llah address other believers in a similar fashion?
Yes, it's remember, some of this was these cryptic ways was to protect the identity, because remember, both the writings of the Bab and Baha'u'llah were outlawed in Iran. So again, if somebody, got a writing and they could prove that it was addressed to them, they could go to prison, for it. And not only just possessing it, but receiving it.
Mm-hmm.
So Baha'u'llah would use, both the Bab and Baha'u'llah would use these cryptic forms of referring to, like Nabil, as because they're Muhammad, but there's so many people by the name of Muhammad, but they would know, But Samandar is something that in those who have, only Samandar, and then later on those people would identify Sheikh Kazem as being Samandar. So again, it was still, but the Kaf Zat was really there to denote Kazem, and so it was very, very common. Very common.
Riaz, there's people asking lots of questions, which is great. Riaz says, is there any document about Ali Pasha or Fuad Pasha that describes, quote, in their own words, their reasoning for their objections to Baha'u'llah? For example, do we know if they were concerned about the new message of Baha'u'llah that might cause disruptions to their plans for the Tanzimat by converting their subjects to a new faith, or was it just to please the Shah and the clergy in Iran?
You have to understand. That Baha'u'llah was, and his situation to these politicians was a nuisance. It was not a major event that was, they were dealing with other. If you look at the history of the Ottoman 19th century, there were a lot of economic, political issues that was going on. So in the midst of all that other noise of the day to day, this was one, and I would say a minor thing for them. They did, for them, they just couldn't even be bothered. I don't think, whether there is a document or not, I don't know. Nothing has come to light. Future historians may, if these guys had journals, that private journals, that maybe that would have been the case, but I don't know. There wasn't anything that certainly any of the Baha'i historians, or even I know Dr. Najati Al-Khan has done his dissertation on, basically this the Ottoman reform movement, and also the issues of the Baha'is and so on. With the exception of that interrogative commission, or that commission that was in Istanbul trying the Baha'is and the Azalis prior to Baha'u'llah's exile, there's really not much beyond that. There might be some letters here and there, but definitely there may have been correspondence where Ali Pasha would have written to Mirza Hossein Khan, or Mirza Hossein Khan written, or they would have shared some correspondence saying that we need to deal with these with Baha'u'llah, Sheikh Baha. Actually, he was referred to as Sheikh Afandi. He was that was how in Ottoman Turkey he was referred to. But yeah, there is no document of significance that we have right now. But I'm sure it will come to light if there are some in future.
Good. Someone noted that the link wasn't visible, so I've now pasted it back in so that it's visible to attendees as well as panelists. So you can probably get that link now to Mr. Samandari's talk at the World Congress. Jerry also asks this question, Lohe Fuad, line 4. What is your take on the word smitten? Smitten.
Well,
gotta find it.
And 4, yeah, he was smitten upon the mouth and told, yeah, there is no escape. Basically, by slapping someone on the mouth, it was a punishment. It was something that that parents did to their children. If they said something unseemly, they would be reprimanded by a slap on the face, basically on their mouth. So that's what it is, and this is this is also mentioned in the Quran as well. And
do we know what killed Fuad Pasha? He went to Paris. He may have had cancer or something like that. That was long term.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We don't know. I mean, who cares?
It might very well have involved his face, is what I'm thinking. I mean, what's his name? Afghani died of cancer of the chin, for example, of all things. So I was wondering if it was something like that. Who knows?
I don't know. I mean, I mean, some people can investigate that. I haven't come across what their maladies were. I mean, I'm sure there are going to be biographies, if not written right now, if not published, but in the scholarly circles, because both Fuad and Ali are well known in that period as prominent individuals, and there have been books written on them, and there is information about them. But I mean, obviously, if he had gone to Paris, it must have been something that the doctors in Constantinople couldn't help him with it. Yeah, I think he probably had some type of a cancer, and many of these individuals smoked quite a bit and drank, so it could have been anything from a cancer of the lung, pancreatic cancer, and any of those deadly
cirrhosis.
Diseases. That they
that's true.
normally would get.
That's true. I don't see any other questions, and my goodness, we've gone an hour and 25 minutes. This has been really quite a remarkable wrap up on these 3 tablets, these 4 webinars. And unless someone else has another comment or question, I think we're pretty much finished. I'm looking to see if there's anything in the Q&A, and there isn't. So if there's nothing else, thank you so much. This was really very interesting, and now I have to pull out my copy of Summons of the Lord of Hosts and reread these tablets. I don't, unfortunately, when my office moved to the basement, I don't have my books nearby. So one thing I need to do is get a supply of my Baha'i books and put them down here too, so that I have them in my office.
They're wonderful tablets, and definitely worth a reread and restudy.
Yeah. So we have both a merci and a shukran pasted into chat now. So Thank you very much. I will add
Welcome.
my thanks as well. And we've got another week to the class for people to finish reading the tablets and asking their questions. And then that particular course will also wrap up. We're very grateful for this particular set of presentations, which will greatly enrich not only our understanding of these tablets, but at some point when we make these publicly available, they will enrich for years into the future many people's understanding of these tablets. So thank you very much again, Shahrokh. And we look forward to...
My pleasure. My pleasure.
We look forward to
continue.
Future ones.
Yes, we'll continue to do that, God willing, with the letters to
Napoleon and Victoria.
Yes, Queen Victoria, Tsar of Russia, Pope, and and the proclamations and the Bahá'u'lláh to various other monarchs as well. So
we have a chunk of the 2020s ahead of us to look forward to those.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you for having me, and great to be in this course. And again, if the students have any other comments or questions, they can post it in the forum, and we'll address them.
Yep. Well, we have a thank you so much and a million thanks here in the chat, and I think that kind of wraps it up very well. So thanks everyone for participating, and we look forward to more comments in the class over the next week. Bye-bye.